this down. See how fast we jump in. Go ahead and get this ready. Waiting on me to start. More delay than usual this evening, it feels like. There it goes. So about 30-second delay. All right, cool. Hello and welcome back to Chiefsman's Corner Live with a twist tonight. I'm attempting to catch Discord audio as part of this, and I'm honestly not sure how successful it will be. I've done some testing beforehand. It seems like it's worked pretty well. I'm hoping I can truly have some live content from you guys tonight if you are available. I'm your host, Coach Winovus, one of the leadership team here in WFL. This show will dive into Week 10 action, bring back our players of the podcast after a very long hiatus, and do some draft talk to gear us up for our final draft of Madden 23. We'll finish up with our Ask the Chiefs segment as always. I do have YouTube up and running and ready for comments, and I also have Discord available for DM comments. Bear with me trying to keep up with everything. I'm online and available, so if anyone's tuned in, welcome aboard. Thanks for listening. You can comment in YouTube chat or in Discord if you'd like. If you would like to talk live on the show, please DM me beforehand so we can get you on if you're interested in talking. Hop into the WFL Network Studios voice chat area if you're interested in getting on the show. If you're watching the recording of this, however, after the fact, we still thank you for watching. Any and all support is appreciated. Without you guys, the WFL doesn't exist. As always, we're going to do some housekeeping notes. First thing to talk about, as always, is the incentive plan for WFL. This plan allows you to get some perks that aren't available for every member simply by doing some extracurricular activities that involve WFL. Anything from Twitter to articles on the Neon Sports site to commenting or participating in the show, even chatting in Discord can earn you points. Anything that makes WFL a more immersive experience and increases its presence in the Madden community earns you some sort of credit. Link to the incentive plan is available using the command /incentive plan in Discord. That is all one word, /incentive plan in Discord. Next thing to talk about is our Ask the Chief form, which 2 people have filled out, at least as of the time of checking it. 2 folks have filled out some questions for the show. Use this form during the week between episodes to submit any questions you have, though, and I'll answer them during the show, giving you credit for the question. Easy way to build up some incentive points and provide extra content for the podcast. Use the command /askthechief, all one word, /askthechief, to pull up the form in Discord. With the end of the season coming closer, I realize we're currently in week 11, but we're just around the corner from week 18, believe it or not. We're going to start asking folks to fill out our end-of-season survey. This survey is completely optional, but it does give you an opportunity to speak up on any issues you see in WFL, both good and bad. I respond via DM to any survey turned in, and I'm the only one that reads the surveys. I want the WFL to be a destination league, and this is one process we use to keep us moving in a positive direction. Use the custom command /WFL survey in Discord to get a link to the survey in the next few game weeks. It is currently not available, but do be aware we'll be putting that up here probably within the next week or 2. Lastly, be aware that this next draft that we have will more than likely be the final official thing WFL does for this cycle. If you wish to swap to a team that's currently open, please let leadership know and do so when advised by leadership to do so. Do remember that whatever team you are in Madden 24, those players taken by your current team in the last draft and this upcoming one are eligible. If you swap away from quality drafted players, they do not go with you. With housekeeping out of the way, let's recap scores from Week 10 and highlight our offensive and defensive players of the podcast from that week. And let me pull up. Let me go to it first. Boom, boom. Here we go. There we go. Bump. Poof. Alrighty. So let's zoom it in a little bit so we can all see the scores, because that is T-Tawny and I'm old and I can't see. There we go. That's a little better. So we start with the CPU Minnesota Vikings giving Juke and the Colts a little bit more than they probably expected to handle. 34-24 is your final here. The Minnesota Vikings CPU falls to 2-9, while the Indianapolis Colts move to 6-4 on the regular season. Jets and Titans in a clash of fairly new owners to us. The Jets overcome the Titans 28-17, your final there. Johnny and the Jets are 2-8, and the Titans and Jeremiah are 0-9. Tough tough road for a first season rookie to the CFM side of life. But Jeremiah, I hope you're having fun, and I hope you're enjoying your time here. More Week 10 action. This was a simulated game between the Lions and the Jaguars. The Lions win the simulation 38-22 is your final there. Detroit moves to 8-2 on this season, and Jacksonville falls to 8-2 in the season, and being a dominant force in the AFC South for the Jaguars and in the NFC North for the Detroit Lions. In CPU clashing, the Arizona Cardinals moved to 3-6 with a 38-9 win over the CPU Rams. Winovus and the Cardinals, that's me, go up to 3-6 on the season, while the CPU Rams fall to 2-7. More CPU action as the Patriots and 49ers clash. The 49ers overcome the Patriots, though. 35-28 is your final. The CPU 49ers, at least CPU as of now, moved to 5-4 on the season, whereas the the Patriots CPU falls to 1-9. Skipped a game ahead as I go to the Steelers and Broncos. Steelers overcome the CPU Broncos, 42-21 is your final there. Chill and the Steelers move to 7-3, and the Denver Broncos fall to 2-7. Week 10 action continues with Miami and Cleveland. A battle between AFC East and AFC North. The Dolphins overcome the Browns 31-21, your final there. Miami moves to 6-4 on the season, and Waffles and the Browns fall to 4-5. Cowboys versus the CPU Baltimore Ravens. Close one here. 27-19 is your final here. Cowboys move to 7-2 on the season. Baltimore Ravens fall to 4-6. Welcoming back a old friend in Ruffles. And the Panthers, as he is another notch on the belt of Hachi and the Saints. 27-13 is your final here. Carolina, Ruffles did come in late in the season, but he is currently sitting at 1-8. The Saints are sitting at 9-0, 10-0 as of the recording of this, because they just played, I assume, their Week 10 game or Week 11 game. The Texans actually fall to the Bears. 42-20 is your final here. Smash and the Bears go to 8-1. Texans fall to 6-3. A couple of games now behind the division leading Jaguars. Chargers and Falcons. CPU versus Falcons. Studley has another undefeated guy under his belt in the NFC South. 9-0 Atlanta. 36-20 is your final over the 4-6 CPU Chargers. Tampa Bay, in an attempt to try and repeat as champs, are having a tough go of it with some stalwart players in the NFC South. Tampa Bay does raise their record, however, to 4-6 with a 38-26 win over the CPU Commanders. Raiders and Chiefs in a simulated game. Kansas City and Bansheeman come out on top over the Raiders and La Migra. 38-24 is your final here. Both teams are 5-4 on the season. And our game of the week, I believe this was one that was voted on by you guys. Bengals and Giants, and in a close one, the Bengals are overcome by the New York Giants. 31-28 is your final there. The Giants and Clyde go to 8-2, while the Bengals and Rusta fall to 8-3. And that is your Week 10 action. With that being said, we're going to talk about our players of the podcast and our offensive player of the podcast, because I like to highlight teams that don't normally get highlights on these podcasts due to win-loss records, or just I like to try and highlight those users that may not get pointed out a whole lot. I'm going to highlight Cooley G and the Cowboys for my offensive player of the podcast. That is wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. He had 6 catches for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 27-19 win over the Ravens this past week. And my defensive player of the podcast is a guy I have highlighted before, but he's technically, we'll call him new even though he's returning. Ruffles and Panthers safety Xavier Woods had 5 tackles, a sack, and an interception in the 27-13 loss to the Saints. Xavier Woods did all he could to keep his team in it. Just the Saints were just too much for the Panthers' slightly depleted roster. And now we're going to talk a little bit of draft. And I know it's a little early to be talking draft because with the way we do things here in the WFL, we're going to have input from obviously the real draft that occurs, I believe, April 27th, which as of recording is 10 days away from this recording. So not this Thursday, but next Thursday, I believe, is when it'll start up. Do be aware that obviously some of these things we're going to show basically who's currently sitting in the top 5 or 6 picks, and I'll show my top 10 board, or actually my entire board, as notched up by scouting that's been done in game. So I'm going to bring it up now right here. Boop. There we go, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Boop, boop, boop. Nope, come on. There we go. There we go. All right, so let me scroll here on the sides. Let me shrink this away, get rid of some of this stuff. All right, so now if you're not familiar with Buckman's big board, and I understand if you aren't, because if you don't really pay attention to it, I don't blame you. Every year I try to make sure that I do an updated board of every single player, and essentially I give them ratings, and I'll show you quarterback ratings just to kind of give you an idea. Essentially, we rate everything as far as their acceleration, agility, change of direction, whatever their major athletic attributes that are rated in the game. We give them a point spread based on how well they are. Obviously, grade elite is the highest point you can get. Poor marginal is the lowest you can get. And then we add that to their skills-based attributes. And obviously, this is a grade range from A to F. A, you get the highest point value. F, you get the lowest point value. And we come up with 2 different scores. Well, 3 scores in total. We come up with Buckman's athletic quotient, which is simply their athletic attributes. So the attributes in this case for quarterbacks: acceleration, agility, change of direction, jump, speed, strength, and throwing power. That's a total measurement of all those numbers basically calculated into one. So you can see Jaron Short, a guy we're going to talk about potentially as a top 5 pick out of Harvard of all places. Thank you, Madden Draft. Very athletic guy coming out of the gate as compared to his peers. You can kind of look down here and see the scores here. He is the most athletic quarterback coming out in this draft class. And then you have Buckman's skills quotient, which is simply basically adding up all the values of all of these. I scrolled too far past. Of all of these attributes, essentially the point values that are assigned to these, we basically add them all together, and that gives us our skills quotient. And then you add those 2 numbers together, and you get the Buckman athletic and skills quotient, the total score, which is the thing we focus on when we look at our big board here. This is the number we organize our big board by. And as you can see, our top 4 guys in this draft, according to Buckman's big board, are all tight ends. With one tight end cracking the 100 mark. That's actually the first one I've seen this particular Madden class. DeAndre Pemberton out of UCLA, 6'3", 254. We'll go to his particular tab page here for tight ends. But as you can see, a guy who's got good to great across the board as far as his athletic attributes. And then when you scroll across, he's got great hands, great job catching in traffic, good stamina, good run blocking, not great. Solid route running across the board as compared to the draft class. So you can see why DeAndre Pemberton, actually that was Joseph Spencer I was looking at. DeAndre Pemberton's right below him, and he's got just as good, if not better, attributes across the board. Run blocking is great. His hands are solid. So you've got a lot of good tight ends right here at the top. You can see Joseph Spencer's got a round 1-2 draft grade. DeAndre Pemberton also has a round 1 or 2 draft grade. But Pemberton leads our big board as far as draft. But you can see we have a score of 101 for Pemberton. We have a score of 97 for Spencer. We have a score of 90 for Brian Anthony. We have a score of 88 for Jeff Henley. And then our first non-tight end on the board is Henry Thomas out of LSU, who gets a BASQ score of 87 with a 28 in athletics and a 59 in skills. 6'5", 220 pounds. As we go to his particular draft board page, you can kind of see he's actually down here. He's actually listed as a round 1 to 2 grade. He's listed below Marquis Henson, Perry Manning, and Travis Brown. But as you can see, Perry Manning and Travis Brown both have well lower grades according to our BASQ than Henry Thomas does. As we scroll across, obviously he's a physical wide receiver, 6'5", comes in with solid to good speed. But his big thing across the board here is going to be spectacular catch is real big. His short route running, run blocking is good as well. Release is good. Hands are very solid, as well as catching traffic ratings. So you can kind of get an idea of why he's rated so well by our draft board. Is he the best wide receiver in the class? Maybe not. Marquis Henson, the top guy according to Madden by their listing, is listed with a BASQ of 83, so very close. But obviously, according to our draft board here, or Buckman's big board here, Henry Thomas is going to be the guy that could potentially be a beast for you in Madden 24 should you desire to have that level of player. Going back to our big board, our first quarterback, Jaron Short, as we talked about earlier, a very athletic, very skilled quarterback out of Harvard. Smallish, or well, I guess average height and weight, 6'2", 222. Our first running back, Rudy Potter out of Washington State, 5'8", 209, grades in at an 86 as well. Another tight end, Tyreek Tyson out of Clemson, comes in at the 8th spot. Marquis Henson, I talked about earlier, the wide receiver out of Notre Dame that leads the wide receiver draft class. He comes in at number 9 position on the board. And then the 10th spot is occupied by yet another tight end, Craig Grove out of USC. You can kind of see as we go down the list, we've got a couple of halfbacks at 11, 12, and 13. 14, we have yet another tight end out of Army, Alexander Bray. A couple more halfbacks, and then we got a couple of wide receivers that start to break into our 79 range as we start to get lower in. Our first defensive player on the board is going to be Scott Harris out of Wisconsin, 6'1", 225. He grades in at the 20th spot for our BASQ. Once we get the number grade in, it's basically based by alphabetical order, so any one of these guys can be interchangeable at this spot. They kind of all tied for 15th at this point, from Sammy Chamberlain on down to Scott Harris. We do keep fullbacks in here because fullbacks are position people too. So be aware that fullbacks are listed in this list. Braden McDaniels, the top linebacker on the board, graded as a top 5 potential pick in Madden, is listed here as my 25th best prospect, or tied for 21st best prospect. 6'4", 255 edge rusher out of Stanford. Ben Brown out of Florida State at the middle linebacker spot, also tied in there for 21st as well. 6 foot 240, big 3-4 style middle linebacker, or could be an anchor there in a 4-3 setup depending on his athleticism, which, hey, you know what? We've got time. Let's go look at it real quick on the board. So let's see Ben Brown here. Let's see what he's got for stats here. So comes across, great elite speed, great elite agility, great change of direction. Now this is obviously based on the draft class. Great PRC coming out, great man and zone coverage, so a guy who can definitely play in a 4-3 technique as a true middle linebacker, off-ball linebacker, or has the size and capacity to play basically part-time essentially in a 3-4 with another middle linebacker there. Could be a really good pickup for Madden 24 for somebody that wants to have a potential good user linebacker from day one and make sure they're guaranteed that. Ben Brown could be your guy. And he is rated our 22nd best prospect, or tied for 22nd. That's all I'm going to do for this draft stuff for now, mainly because I think once we actually have the real life draft go on, we will have some ability to talk a little more about the draft and how our draft class will shake out. Do remember that in our draft class, our carryover, the way we do carryover is you will have the ability to choose either, and this is the first time we've done this, you will have the ability to choose someone either from the draft we just had this past month or so ago, or you can choose somebody from this draft. Any one of the picks you make in this upcoming draft that's coming up in a few weeks, or the ones that were made a few weeks ago, you will have access to all those players. We have them actually in a spreadsheet. We have the players from the previous draft in a spreadsheet. But do be aware, if you do choose a player that you picked in this previous draft, or that was picked for you by the CPU in the previous draft, do be aware that any points you gain, experience points you gain with that player, will not be honored in the new game. Essentially, they will be created as they were the night of the draft. So if you've gained any special abilities, if you've tinkered with them with off-season program stuff, that all will be changed back to their defaults, but you can make changes with it going forward. So just be aware of that. If you pick a player from the previous draft we just had, they will be factory default, so to speak. They will be day one from the draft. They will not have any points that you earned during this season added onto them. Okay, so just so your expectations are set there. The way that our carryover draft is done is essentially we bring in players to supplement what you're missing based on free agency in the draft. These are not designed to be super players you can bring in to basically take your team from worst to first instantly. That's not how the WFL operates as far as their rookie carryover. So if you're not familiar with our rookie carryover versus maybe other leagues' rookie carryovers, that's how we do things. You come in with a fresh, clean rookie, no experience, but you do have a 4-year contract locked in. And if the player was a first-round selection, you will get the opportunity to have a 5th-year option that we will have to obviously do ourselves, but it's one that you can actually implement as part of it. So just be aware of that with your rookie carryover. Obviously, I'm always excited for the draft, so whenever that draft comes up, I'll be ready. Probably on a different team. I don't know if I'll be the Cardinals. I've talked about being the Rams for the next Madden just because the Rams are going to be god-awful. So we'll see what happens. But with that in mind, let's go to Ask the Chief, and let me bring up the questions here. And I'm going to pop them up here. And the first question actually was posted a few days ago, actually between shows, actually, before I even knew I was coming back from hiatus. Clyde sent this in. Considering we've just had the last draft of playable rookies in Madden 23, who are your most memorable Madden-generated draft class? And unfortunately, he did add the caveat, which I'm not going to scroll across. He did add the caveat that we've technically only had one Madden-generated draft because, as everybody knows here, we got reset on December 28th because FUEA. So we basically have had 2 drafts, one of which was a, quote, realistic draft class that's going to be coming up this particular draft that's coming up in real life in the next 10 days. I will state that I think the most memorable Madden player we have, and obviously this is a loaded question because it's really only one draft class I can pick from. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with a obvious choice. I'm going to go with the generational talent Evan Carroll that was drafted first overall by the Colts. The guy came out at like an 81 or an 82 overall. So, I mean, he came out the box super good, super talented. A guy that essentially the Colts on the back end of the defense in the secondary. That's a guy you bring over. You don't care about who you draft in this upcoming draft if you're the Colts and Juke. I don't think you're going to find a better player than Evan Carroll, especially where they'll be picking this particular Madden draft because the Colts will probably be picking in the teens, whereas they were picking number 1 this past draft, or they traded for the number 1 pick. I can't remember. But either way, I think they traded for number 1 actually. But either way, Evan Carroll I think is going to be my pick just because I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to be recreated in Madden 24, and he will be an anchor on that back end for 4 to 5 years at one's corner spot, and then essentially the Colts just hope to fill with some other talent, the other cornerback spots. I'm not sure what they've done in free agency or the draft this past season, so I'm not sure what their situation is. I know they traded Stephon Gilmore to the Cowboys, but I'm sure there's some young talent there. I know Isaiah Rodgers will be there. I had the Colts in another league 2 years ago, so I kind of a little familiar with some of the players you'll have. But Kwity Paye, obviously DeForest Buckner, I think is still there. That could be an iffy one. He might have got moved in free agency this past season. But there are some losses you have to overcome. Obviously, I know Okereke, if I'm pronouncing that right, Bobby Okereke went to the Giants. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. I'm sorry, Colts fans and Juke in particular. But I think Evan Carroll would be my guy. And then one that's a rules question from Smash, and I like this question because I like talking rules. I might even come off camera. I might come back on camera for this one. Can we put a rule in place for new owners not trading draft picks until they complete a season? Let's bring my face back up here. In the past, I've not had issues with owners trading 2nd through 7th round picks. My biggest beef with pick movement has always been moving a 1st round pick unless we're in the off season where that draft is about to take place. And the reason is real simple. From a leadership standpoint, I don't like that 1st round pick being traded in the season, even though it happens in real life, because my reasoning is this. If someone trades the 1st round pick, whether it's 5th overall, 7th overall, 32nd overall, whatever. If you trade your first round pick for a player, which is typically what happens in a Madden league, you trade picks for players. Normally it's picks for picks, just that kind of thing. But normally during the regular season or even off season, it's picks for players. If you trade your first round pick for a player and you get removed from your team or you quit, which can happen. I mean, we've had Madden burnout happen this Madden where guys have quit, come back, obviously, but some have quit and gone, and that's fine. But if you trade that first round pick and you get a player that you like, but then you are no longer here, whomever takes over that team, if that player you acquired is not a player they care for, or is a player that doesn't really work for them, that doesn't gel with how they play, not only are they stuck with this player unless someone else wants to take them, but they're also out the first round pick that they would use to potentially replace this guy. So while I've allowed first round picks to be traded in recent years, I am still not a fan of it. But I've also never had really an issue, for the most part, with guys coming in and immediately making trades. But I could see where maybe we could institute something, and I can talk with leadership about it, about putting in basically a trial period, a probationary period where you are prohibited from making trades as far as officially in game. You can talk trades if work some things out, but maybe have a minimum X number of games before you can make a trade in WFL. I don't like hamstringing guys like that, especially coming in, because I think it's very restrictive. But I can understand the point of view of, especially like what I just said, from a leadership standpoint, whenever picks get moved and players are acquired for those picks, and the owner leaves, then the person who comes in on that team is out the picks that were moved, and if they don't like the players, they're kind of screwed double time. And especially if that owner comes in and is gone in a matter of weeks, I can understand the frustration with that. But it's something I can approach with leadership for sure. As far as putting a restriction, I don't know what it would be if we even agree to it, but I can at least broach the idea with leadership. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I could see where guys that coming in would probably bristle a little bit at it, and I can understand that point of it. So with that being said, that pretty much ends my Ask the Chief segment, and that also ends my show, because I don't see anybody in chat, which is cool and kosher. I wanted to try and test run it, but that's okay. I understand I'm doing this at an awkward time for some guys to be able to jump in and talk, which is cool. But I wanted to make it available, and I want to try and do this as much as I can between now and the beginning of May, whenever my schedule will change and I won't be able to do shows at this time frame. It'll be more during the day if we're still even playing. So do be aware that 3 weeks, I've got 2 weeks, this week, next week, and the following week. So I got 2 more weeks after this one where I have this time slot open to do shows like this. But after those 2 weeks, it'll have to change to a different format, or someone else will have to do a show for the rest of the cycle. Just because I do this when my wife is gone, because I'm doing it in the living room right now, in case you aren't aware. There's other side. There's wedding photos right there, and right there. Yeah, I'm doing this right in front of my TV stand is right here. My TV is over there. So I'm doing this in my living room, and obviously if the wife was here, this would not be an appropriate setup to do it in. And this is where the router is. This is where I connect up. So this is kind of where I have to do the show. And this is also where I have lighting. I have a lamp right here. That's what's providing me the wonderful lighting. If I cut it off, you'd never see me again. I'd disappear. But I do hope that I can get some Discord check in between now and the time I don't do the show. At least I don't lead a show. But I'm hoping that I know Juke did a episode of the podcast that apparently was pretty well received. I saw on our YouTube channel, it had like 50 plus views. I was like, holy crap. I don't think I have total of 53 views across all my videos, but I think what I want to ultimately do is I want to get the podcast in the spot where it benefits everybody, and hopefully I can do some more between now and then. I'd like to do some real stuff too. I'd like to do a real life draft and things of that nature, but that's going to be a lot tougher because the wife will be home. So, but we'll see. I'll try and see if I can work some stuff in, because once the first week in May is over, unless I get a new job, I will be more wide open because I will be out of school and I will be off for summer. So, but that's personal stuff. So who cares about that stuff, right? All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the good old outro. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, whether you were live or whether you're looking at the recording after the fact. I appreciate it. The WFL appreciates it. And we hope that you were entertained by the show. Let us know by throwing us a like, a subscribe, or leaving some comments. Any feedback is appreciated, good or bad. Until next Monday, and for the next 2 Mondays, folks, the corner is closed.